Well, it's good to see you, Mr. Bundy.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Bill. And
I sure appreciate the time with you.
this is great. I am really excited to be here, and I'm just want to understand more about the Boise Rescue Mission, about what you do. I know a little bit, and I've just been impressed with all of it that I've seen so far. And so, you want to tell us a little bit about Boise Rescue Mission, what you're doing, what it's all about, and kind of give us a little bit of groundwork there?
Sure would. Love to. And again, thanks for the time and thanks for sharing our information with your friends and supporters.
Thanks.
We have been here since 1964, and the Rescue Mission is the largest homeless service provider in the state of Idaho, one of the largest in the Northwest. We have 5 shelter facilities in the Treasure Valley. One of those is exclusively for homeless people who are being discharged from the hospital and are homeless, have nowhere to go, and physically they're not ready for life in the shelter with 125 or 200 other people. So that shelter is called the Mission Recovery Lodge, and that's what it is. It's for those folks. We have a men's and women's shelter in Boise and a men's and women's shelter in Nampa, and the Recovery Lodge is also in Nampa. Beside that, we have about 50 units of transitional apartments, various sizes from a single room occupant to a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. And those are split up between Boise and Nampa. So that when people complete the process of recovery from homelessness, whether it's from addiction or whether it's getting a handle on their mental health issues, or if they're just underemployed, academically behind, a few job skills, they get into one of our programs, they graduate, they complete the program, then in those cases we can offer them a place to stay in a continuation of the program of case management, but almost like living independently in their own place and getting them ready so they can save their money, pay off some debt, build a good credit history and that kind of thing, so they can finally be able to rent out in the broad community. That's a great opportunity for people, and we see a lot of success. About 30 of those transitional living units are for veterans exclusively, and those are on the 3rd floor at our mission in Boise, the men's mission. And we have pretty much have them filled all the time. I think there's 36 now. We took some more space, made some more rooms for them.
There.
Yeah. So we do that, and we're a Christian nonprofit organization. We don't take any money from the government, nor do we hit people over the head with a big black King James Bible to try to convert them. You'll hear that from our friends in the homeless camp, for example, that we make people go to church, we make people pray, and nothing could be further from the truth. We offer people those opportunities. We have chapel every night at all of our shelters, and if you like to go to chapel, you're welcome to come to chapel.
I would venture to say that you believe, or that your organization believes, that if people would understand the principles that are taught in the Bible, it's going to help them not to transition through the period of life that they're in, to get themselves on a better place, so that offering that truth and that understanding is going to help them. So you're going to offer it, but you're not going to force it upon them.
Exactly.
And so it's available to those who want to come here and don't necessarily want to go to church, or don't want to be ministered to in that way. Mm-hmm. It's still available to all those people who need that transitioning period, even though they may not be ready for listening to the gospel of Jesus Christ taught by somebody here in the ministry. Correct?
That's exactly right. Yeah. And it might surprise some of our friends out there to know that people voluntarily go to chapel. There's a group of people in chapel every night that aren't forced to be there, but they go there because they're in a pickle. They're homeless. They're living in a homeless shelter. They need help, and they know that. They're not. These people aren't ignorant. Right. They know that they're homeless and there's trouble and problems. Maybe these things from the Bible, this preaching of the gospel can help me, and they show up in chapel. Yeah. And we see great responses to our chapel too. A lot of people make a decision there to follow Jesus and to let the Lord change us from the inside out, which is the best process that anybody can go through.
I agree. So One of the things that really interested me right at the beginning, and one of the reasons why I felt like it's so important to support your organization and to support what you're doing, is because not only are you being very effective about helping people through this transition and giving them the life skills and helping them to self-govern themselves in a way that gets them where they can, be on their own, stand on their own, but you do it without government funding. And I commend you, because it has to be tempting to constantly to not just go after the programs that you would qualify for. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe end with saying why you do that?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
We've had many a conversation in the boardroom about these issues, and particularly 2 years ago or so, when the federal government decided to start printing and giving away a lot of money over the COVID pandemic. Mm-hmm. And of course, as a corporation, a nonprofit corporation, we were eligible to apply for literally tens of thousands of dollars, and we would have gotten tens of thousands of dollars for anything that we could sign a paper for. But we didn't have many discussions over that, because we've already been through this process. I've been here 20 years in this organization, and I know the mind of the board pretty well, and they know me, and we're just not going to do that. But we could have, and certainly today, with the money that comes from the federal government through the state to the cities in the valley here and the county, if we were of a mind to take that money, we certainly could get most of it, honestly.
Yeah.
Because we have programs that are verifiable and outcomes that we can track and testify to, and legitimately serve the most homeless people in the state of Idaho. But nonetheless, when you take the government money, just as we see in government, and you know this better than I do, but when the state government takes federal money, suddenly all the rules change about how you can spend and use that money, and there's dictation from somewhere in DC with a bureaucrat telling you what to do. For example, if we took federal money to serve homeless people in this rescue mission, then every person checking in, the day they check in, would have a date to check out in advance, because they're only going to fund this program for this many days. Part of the reason we see so many people failing to stay sober after going through one of these kinds of programs is because it's not long enough. We've had people stay with us for up to 3 years, because that's how long it took for that person to get sober, to get the mental health issues under control, to take care of her beautiful children. It took almost 3 years. And we could stand alongside of her for 3 years because no one was telling me, they got to go, the money's gone.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, because it ends up being about what they need, about love, and not offering that. And rather than some rule that was pushed down from the state or from the federal government because you took their money. So, I mean, is it fair for me to make a conclusion that you don't take the federal money or the government money so that you can be free to administer your programs the way that you choose and the board chooses, and everybody works in that direction?
That's exactly right. Okay. That's a perfect way to put it. We are free of the government controls, and we can build relationships with people, which is where change comes from.
Right.
If you trust me and I help you, and you trust me more and I continue to help you, that's the relationship. Yeah. That's the process that's going to bring someone from being in a tent by the river to being in their own home somewhere in the Treasure Valley.
Yeah. And it's funded, because I don't consider welfare charity. I don't consider it charity when it comes from the government, because the government took it and really didn't give us a choice, and they took it and then they redistributed. So it's just redistribution of somebody else's hard-earned, labor and fruits. But charity is when an individual chooses, once they have made that or have that wealth, they choose to use it for good purposes, like contributing to the Boise Rescue Mission. So this entire organization is held up by the charity of people in this area. And you were telling me earlier about how Idaho and Boise is one of the most charitable places that you've ever been in. And do you mind talking to the people about that a little
Well, it is not one of, Ammon, it is the most generous community on the face of the earth. And I served in rescue mission for 30 years now. I started in Santa Rosa, California, went to Denver, Colorado, back to Santa Rosa, then I went up to Redding. I was the director at Redding, and then to here. Those were all great communities, and most of the time those agencies met their budget. But I've never seen anything like this community. And that's another thing that irks me when I hear allegedly homeless people talking about no one cares and no one will help us. This agency since 1964 has been in existence, has grown, has prospered, has been able to develop a multitude of programs to really help people overcome homelessness, because the generous people of the Treasure Valley write a check once in a while to the Boise Rescue Mission.
So
phenomenal.
The people here do not have in general, of course I'm speaking, do not have the mentality that it's the government's responsibility to take care of their neighbors, to help their neighbors. They have the mentality that they need to and they want to, and you see it every day, and that's how this organization is upheld. That's how you're able to offer, and grow. It sounds like you just not very long ago bought this building here, and you're able to do that by and by the goodwill of the people of this area. And now, how many just in this building are you able to? This was going to be transitional housing.
No, that building's on Curtis Road.
Oh, on Curtis. Okay.
We've been in this building, but we were able to buy this building because people gave to buy this building.
Right.
This is our administrative headquarters, and out there I've got about a 15,000 square foot warehouse with a 900 square foot walk-in freezer, funded by the generous people of the Treasure Valley.
So the building that you just bought,
Yeah.
you were telling me about that.
Yeah.
And an individual came in and just says, "Hey, I've got $100,000 to give to that," and people have just been contributing to that, and so now it sounds like you only got a couple $100,000 left to pay onto that building, and it's all done by people loving their neighbor.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's just amazing to me. I mean, and it's amazing that you've held on to that those principles and then been blessed because of them.
And I think that's the key.
Yeah.
We're Christians and we mean it. We love people and we want to serve people in the name of Jesus and for the sake of Jesus. When you go into this kind of work with that as your motivator, it's really fun to come and do what you do, and you enjoy every minute of it. I got a great team of people here that just love to do what we do, whether they're the photographer or the cook or the case manager or the CEO.
Right.
We're grateful that we can come and be a part of this every day. And with that, the blessings and the grace of God in our personal lives and in the life of this ministry have been just phenomenal. I could tell you testimonies all day long about people I've known, from an 87-year-old World War II veteran dying from prostate cancer who walked in the house to die and found his way to Jesus while he stayed with us. And he did die, but he died with dignity. He died surrounded by people who loved him. And I can tell you about little children that were left behind by their mom, a drug addict mother who just left a note, "Take care of my baby," and left the building in the middle of the night, and how we took those babies and with help through our attorney primarily, got them adopted into a wonderful Christian family. So it's the old, it's the young,
Yeah.
it's anybody in between that wants an opportunity to recover from homelessness. This is a good place to do that.
So let's talk a little bit about those who are on the streets here in Boise, because it gets cold here. It gets cold. It's quite miserable out there, and I want to get quite real, because there's probably nobody that understands those people better than your organization, than you. At least much more than I, much more than the normal individual out there just kind of looking from the outside in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very cold. We see some tents and stuff around. It seems to be accelerating a little bit, and then we see what went on across the street from the Capitol building, which end up not being a homeless thing at all. It was more of a demonstration. We can talk about that a little bit, but let's just talk the individual who, you know, maybe they have a substance abuse problem, or maybe they don't. Maybe they, you know, somehow ended up on the street. Is there any reason for them to have to stay out in the cold?
No.
Okay,
No.
so they have a place to go. Now, of course, they need to find out about you. They need to know, but I'm sure you're out. Your name's on the street where, you know, the police know you. The other, you know, people that don't have homes that live out there know you. They know that it's available. So there's nobody out there that has to endure the Idaho extreme weather. They have a place, a warm place they can come to.
They absolutely do, and that's the message that we keep trying to get out into the community. Why I appreciate this opportunity again, because there's so many rumors and innuendos, and you know, let's face it, like any business, we have customers who are unhappy with us, and those unhappy customers go back out into the community, and when one of the news stations walks up with a microphone and says, well, why don't you go to the rescue mission?
Right.
Well, they hate homeless people there. You know, they won't let me smoke, they won't let me drink. I mean, you know, and to me that's absurd. If you come to spend the night at my house, I'm not going to let you smoke or drink.
So is that what you find that the kind of the friction is basically you have standards, and you have to have those standards because you have other guests and you have your staff. I mean, and you know what certain things lead into. You can't allow drugs to be done here. There's standards. They've got to wear their clothes. They've got to there's certain standards. And do you find that ends up being the friction
Yes.
of why someone might leave here and be unhappy?
Yes, that is a big part of it. That you can't get up out of your bunk at after 10 o'clock and wander the building, for example, and people are so. And sometimes, now I said that, but here again, we're all about relationships. And so if I know that you're checking into my shelter tonight and you are paranoid and schizophrenic, we're going to keep a special watch on you.
Yeah.
Because you may very well get up at 2 in the morning and want to wander the building and hear voices and things like that. We're not going to put you out in the cold. We're going to lovingly,
Right.
and I mean that, we're going to lovingly try to get you to come back and go to bed, or come sit in the office next to the overnight staff and visit. We're just going to do our very best to accommodate people. No one has to be out in the cold in this community, period. And it's so discouraging to me when I hear that in the media, and I hear that they interview people at the tent demonstration, mm-hmm. and people tell them how, it's so hard to go through the intake process. I created the policies and procedures for
Right.
that. I'm telling you, it's not hard. We simply want to make sure that you are safe and everybody else in the building is safe. So we instituted metal detectors about 2 years ago, and I hated to do it. I just hated to do it. But when you have people bringing weapons and you discover that in your shelter,
Right.
what are you going to do? I can't have someone in that dorm with a gun. It's just not going to happen.
So you've made the standards. It is you have them. They're there. They're not unreasonable, and they're there to help everybody. But there's no discrimination of who can come here.
None.
There's not. It doesn't matter if they're non-Christian.
No.
So if they're Muslim or if they're Buddhist or if they're atheist, it doesn't matter if that or you don't ask that, right?
Well, we will.
Okay.
Not in the intake necessarily.
Yeah.
We will. What we do say in the intake application, in order to make sure that our Muslim friends and our Buddhist friends and others who do have a faith contrary to ours, we want them to know we are Christians. And there
Absolutely.
are Bibles all over the place here, and you're going to hear people saying "Praise the Lord,"
Awesome.
because we don't want to be offensive,
Yeah.
and we want to let people know right from the beginning that
So you're more than welcome, but
you're
we're
more
Christian.
than welcome.
We're
We're just so
Christian,
you know,
yeah,
we're
we're
Christians.
Christian based,
And we have
you know.
chapel. And if
Yeah.
you'd like to go to chapel, it's at 7 o'clock tonight in the dining room.
Absolutely.
And come on
Okay.
down. And let me say something about that too, Ammon. This is interesting. almost, I hear from my staff all the time about this Arab fellow who's a Muslim, and I hear about these people who came in that are of different faiths. I mean, they're seriously religious people. Those people are the nice people that we get along just fine with. They respect that we have a personal faith because they have a personal
Right.
faith. We get very little flack. They don't go to chapel, and that's fine, but they're there and they cooperate, they're polite. It's a beautiful thing.
That's great.
It is, and we are just blessed to be here in this community with so many wonderful people that think like this and want to help us to do this work, because we can't do it without them.
So just asking for that mutual, respect for your neighbor, giving them opportunity to come to chapel, to share in your faith if they choose to, but it's made it available to all those for the purpose of helping them transition through this period of life, helping get them off the streets. What about families? Like let's say a mother with a couple kids, or even a father and maybe even a husband and a wife with a couple kids. Is there some accommodations, or how would you deal with that situation?
Yeah, well, in the first place, the family, as we know, the family in the homeless population of our community is going to be a single mom with children,
Okay.
and now increasingly a single dad with children. Those are the families that we routinely serve. And so because of that, and about 40% of the overnight population tonight will be women and children, almost 40%, right around there. Because of that, we've not seen the need to create yet another facility where we could have intact families where there's a husband and a wife and children all in the same place. And so we do segregate the population, because in most of the cases, if you tried to blend that population even under one roof in various parts of a building, you get all kinds of conflicts and problems.
Sure.
Because the population that you're serving,
Sure.
they know each other, they've been interacting, and this guy was once that girl's boyfriend, but now there's the new boyfriend, and you get that issue. We see it in the dining room from time to time over at the men's shelter. But anyways, what we do is, if there is an intact family, and I'm sorry that we have to separate them overnight, but we do. And so the fella, and if there's older male children, they can go with dad and stay at the men's shelter. If the children are not older, 12 or 13 years old boys need to be on the men's shelter, or we make special provision for the single mom with a 16-year-old son to stay at the women's shelter.
Right.
But it's a difficult task. So we do separate those families, and then tomorrow morning, to do case management, if they opt for case management, they can both come together and have breakfast at the men's shelter as a family, meet with the case manager at the men's shelter, and the women's case manager comes over and participates in that meeting as well. And we do that to accommodate people as best we can, to serve the largest number of homeless people, and to make those relationships work, so that mom over here who used to go out with Joe over there isn't going to be confronted by Joe.
It's just a problem waiting to happen.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, and that's reality.
Yeah,
People don't want to acknowledge that, but it's a volatile situation sometimes. Most of the women in our shelter have been the victims of domestic violence. At one time, 100% of the women at City Light Home for Women and Children had been sexually abused by a man in their life. And that's a big deal. And trying to mix that population is just not a wise thing to do.
So now let's talk about Boise. Do you see an influx of families, or a need for what you're offering? Have you seen an influx? Is it something that is rising, staying the same, diminishing? Like, where are we at when we're talking about Boise and maybe Idaho too? But let's talk about Boise. I mean, I don't really know the answer to that at all. I'm curious.
Well, I can tell you that our numbers are down historically,
Okay.
and that started with the pandemic. The day that the governor ordered us to shelter in place, if you remember those days, we all do.
March 25th, 2020.
Yeah. On that day, over 100 people left the rescue mission. Men, women, and children.
Okay.
Yeah, 102 or 3 or 4. And those people, for the most part, didn't come back. And then throughout the pandemic, when there were periodic shutdowns and when there was a lot of fear and anxiety going on all around us, it was that our population declined by probably another 50 or so. And we saw a few new people, but there were more not coming back or not showing up than what were coming in. And it hasn't been until about Christmas time, this last Christmas, that we saw the numbers start to come back up again. So, for example, right now, there's going to be between 300 and 350 people in our shelters, all 5. And this time, 4 years ago, it would have been 500.
So I have to ask, like, because to me that surprises me. I'm like, COVID, the stay-at-home order was put in place, and then all of a sudden you see people. Well, so the question is, I have to ask, where did they go, and then why?
Okay.
Like why? Because that really surprises me. Like I would have thought everybody's looking for a place to stay.
I have a theory.
Yeah, I'm really curious to your theory and what you think. So where did they go, and what caused them to leave?
Well, a lot of people won't like this answer.
Okay.
But I'm going to tell you.
As long as it's your honest theory.
My honest opinion is, and I say this. Let me back up. In the middle of last year, we had we belong to a network of rescue missions that's nationwide, and we're broken up by districts, and we're the Evergreen District. So that's Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and that's it. I was on a conference call with 17 mission CEOs in the middle of last year, and every single one of those mission CEOs said the same thing. Their numbers were down, and they didn't understand it, except that in the Northwest, and particularly in Oregon and Washington, which I guess is the Northwest, in the Northwest, the numbers of homeless people had multiplied. And my friends in Ontario, Oregon, were talking to me last year about the homeless population in the city and the surrounds of Ontario has doubled in the last 2 years.
Yep.
My theory is the grass is greener on the other side of the border, and I mean that both by the services that people will receive from the state governments there, and marijuana is legal. And unfortunately, a significant number of homeless people use marijuana and other drugs. So I think, based on what I heard from my friends, that a lot of our people in Idaho decided, why should I put up with all this baloney when I can go over there, I can sleep on the library lawn in my tent, nobody will bother me, I can panhandle anywhere I want to, I won't be arrested for various things, misdemeanors that I would be arrested for in Idaho, and the drugs are abundant and free. I think a lot of people left our region, and I don't think they're coming back.
So they left and they went to Portland area, Seattle area up there, and they went because there was all this COVID money floating around, and it just became very available for people to get whatever they wanted for free, to live how they wanted, and to not be going through this transition of making themselves better. Now, because that's ultimately. So assuming your theory is correct, which I think you would know, and you also have the other, contacts and so forth within your the organization to understand the statistics and where they went and so forth. So you have some really good information. So let's assuming that is correct, that the tragedy of that is you were just telling me earlier how. Was it 400 a year or something, or you had a 4 to 500 people a year go through here, and they transition from homelessness to having a home and getting their life back together. So the tragedy of that is that those people are not going through that process.
That's right.
And you were giving a number of, let's say in a 10-year period, that's 4,000 to 5,000 people just in the Boise area that have gone through your programs and received the love that you're providing, and that the people of this community are contributing to transition them into lives where they're able to govern themselves, where they're able to have homes, some stability there. And that's a tremendous amount of lives that you're benefiting, that you're blessing. And also, imagine, and I know you probably think about this all the time, but these are some fresh thoughts for me. But I'm thinking about, imagine 4,000 to 5,000 people on the streets here in Boise because there wasn't the Boise Rescue Mission here to move them through that process. And then it's sad to hear that, all those people go to Portland, go to Seattle, and go to those areas because of free stuff that the government provides for them, and they never transition through that process.
You're right. That word you use, it's a tragedy. It truly is a tragedy, and it really breaks our hearts to know that probably is the case. That folks they've been enticed by the government, if you will, with the programs and the lack of law and order, even to be able to live free in this dysfunctional lifestyle, and they're just being sucked into it like a big vacuum from the Northwest, because it's so appealing when you don't understand your need for change. And when you get there, you're never going to be motivated to change. You're going to be motivated to continue to live day to day with the government supporting you, or some other branch of government keeping you alive, taking care of your children, and letting you live without having a job, without having responsibilities, and not even looking to do that, just not even knowing you should look to do that.
So if our government, which unfortunately we are, even in Boise, Idaho, even as conservative as we are, we've been making decisions that are very close to Oregon decisions, Washington decisions, and if we continue to make these decisions where we put a ton of government programs, make them available to the people, and create this dependency, it can't be a good thing for anybody. It can't be a good thing for the people. It can't be a good thing for the government. It can't be good for the Boise Rescue Mission, because and maybe I'm drawing some conclusions I shouldn't, but I think we would create a tremendous amount of influx of people and dependency upon the government, which then in return would cause more homelessness, more dependency, more substance abuse, and ultimately, and maybe I'm taking this a little too far, but ultimately become a great burden upon Boise Rescue Mission to be able to bring those people through this process. I might be, again, taking that a little too far, and maybe I'm not taking it far enough, but I can't see how, after what you've explained has happened, especially in the Northwest, government subsidies and programs and welfare increase in this area being a good thing.
I don't think it is. And from time to time people ask me, well, how come we don't see a homelessness problem here like we see in Portland? And if you've been to Portland lately, it's pretty crazy. And Seattle and Spokane and every major city in California. I came from California, and I've got a lot of friends down there in Southern Cal working in rescue. They're overwhelmed. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, I'm from, I grew up about 80 miles from Las Vegas, and I went down, it's been a few months ago. I could not believe, just streets and streets of people lined up with sleeping bags and tents, and there's just gear everywhere and trash, and that's become a familiar scene in these larger cities. And
it is, and it's going to continue because public policy has permitted it and encourages it, and that's what my answer has been to people for the last 10 or so years. Why don't we see that here? Well, we don't see it here because so far we've had good public policy. We've had people, responsible people in government who kept those laws in place. You can't shoplift here and not get arrested.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Yes,
because
it is a good thing.
If you don't motivate people to change somehow, they're not going to be motivated to change. You've got to motivate people. And when you take away the law and you allow people, for example, and I'll just say this now, allowing a tent campaign, whatever they want
demonstration,
to call it, when you allow that to happen, it entices people to do it again and to do it different places and to do it more, and it's just a bad precedent to set. And I wish, in fact, I've contacted my state representatives, the three of them, and told them, in my opinion, you need to move those people off that grass right now, you can't let this go on. That's against the law.
Yeah.
And if you don't uphold the law, that's the beginning of the end.
And just to kind of go back to where we began, there is not a person on the street in Boise that does not have a place to stay.
Exactly.
From what I understand, your capacities have not been, to full capacity. You've always had a place for people to stay. And does that include food?
Yes. Oh yeah. We serve 3 meals a day, and in fact, anyone can come to the dining room. You don't have to be staying with us to come to the dining room. And we serve 3 meals a day every single day of the year.
See, that's amazing. I've thought, I've never been close to being homeless, but I've thought, well, what if I was and I had these little kids and I had the situation like, would I really be able to have a place to go and eat? And I mean, you feel that need. Let's just recap. Let's just kind of recap. So there's nobody in Boise that doesn't have a place to go. They don't have to stay out in the cold.
I have to qualify that, Ammon, because if you have stayed with us in the past and you have committed a serious offense in our facility, we will put you on a list.
Okay.
So if you put your hands on one of my staff, and if you break furniture, if you are a racist and obnoxious to other guests, or any other type of hostile verbal assaults or physical violence, you're going to be on a list, and you may come back. We will consider your appeal to come and stay with us. But there are a group of people, not a lot of people, but there are some people who would show up tonight and they would have to talk to one of my leaders
Right.
in order to be approved to come in.
Okay.
And if you are completely inebriated and you show up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon when sign-in starts, then we're going to probably refuse you services and probably call Boise Police to do a welfare check on you, and they will. And that's another thing. We cooperate with law enforcement completely. We are law and order people. We believe in order and law, and we cooperate with law enforcement. So there are a few people
that's
who might
fair
not
enough.
get in.
That's fair enough.
But if you come in inebriated at 2 this morning, we're letting you in because we're not going to have you freeze to death out there in the cold.
Yeah,
Okay?
that's fair enough. So you have your standards, you have your rules, and if people have come in here and violated those, especially if they've done it over and over again, there's some special things that they have to go through in order to get in here.
Yes.
But if I'm an individual that's out there in the cold and I need a place to stay because I'm desperate for whatever reason, you have a place for me.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, and you'll feed me. If
Yes.
I have children, you can
Yes.
you can accommodate that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Not to mention clothing and shoes and warm winter coats and socks and underwear and hygiene product.
yeah, that's just amazing. I mean, what a great blessing to the community.
Thank you.
Boise Rescue Mission is, and to those that are listening, I say again, look, this is the type of organization that we want to donate to. We want to contribute to, and we want to be very, liberal with our. I don't like to use that word often. We're going to be very liberal with how we contribute to the Boise Rescue Mission because of what they're doing.
Thank you.
And we do it for the primary reason because we love God and we love our neighbor, and the secondary reason is because we don't want government to justify doing it otherwise. We want, private church organizations to fill the space of helping the homeless, getting people on their feet. And I believe very strongly that it's an individual's first responsibility to provide for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
If they get in a situation where they can't, or whatever the reason might be, then they should go to their immediate family, go to their friends, go to those that they know. If they can't get it there, then there needs to be the church and organizations like yours to provide it. So thank you so much for what you do. I'm glad we've had this conversation. To me, has been just intriguing to be able to understand what you do and how it happens a little bit. And so thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Ammon Bundy, for coming to the rescue mission and learning more. Thank you so much for supporting Miller's mission
Yes.
this last year and coming down and visiting with us and supporting the rescue mission. I can't say thanks enough for that. And we wish you the best. And God bless you and your family. I can only imagine the stress and strain you're under every day with this campaign, and as rugged as it is politically speaking,
Yes.
Can get pretty ugly out there. We wish you the best, and God bless you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
What a pleasure, sir. What a
Well,
pleasure.
mine.
What a pleasure.
Definitely my pleasure.
I mean, I'm so happy that you came.